Hi everybody, this is the baseball head, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, people's champion. Your host, the HUD, and we are now 5 days away from the trade deadline. And I would expect that there will be moves coming up for the Mets, I would think. Also, need you to subscribe to the channel and like this video. And of course, let me know what you think. So I'm watching the game, and I'm recording this as the game's going on. I got the TV on, I got on the side here, watching it, and they brought in David Peterson. Saying again, pitched well against the Nationals. Mets aren't scoring runs against this Nationals team. It's a disgrace. I know that Josiah Gray has talent, but it's a disgrace. But an interesting thing happened during the Met game, or during the broadcast, really. They had Mets royalty on. They had Ed Kranepool on. Now, obviously, I'm too young to have seen the '69 team. Way too young, and too young. I wasn't even born yet to watch the '73 team. But when guys that had played for championship teams and guys that have been around leaders and they speak the truth about what's going on currently with our New York Mets, you pay attention. As you know, he was a first baseman and pinch hitter for the Mets. This is Ed Kranepool for 18 years with the Mets. He was here a long time. An original Met, part of the '69 team. Was an all-star. Played at 17 years old. Imagine being 17 years old, being in the big leagues. But that was Ed Kranepool. Well, Ed said during the broadcast, because Steve Gelbs, he's selling a book. Kranepool's selling a book, and he's going to be, selling it, and doing autographs next week at Citi Field, or 2 weeks from now, whatever it is. And Steve Gelbs asked him, "What do you think of the current team?" He goes, "This team lacks leadership, and this team, all these players on this team are playing for themselves." It's like music to my ears. I think you understand now what I've been talking about, and I think a lot of people have been talking about over the last few months about what has been going on with this New York Met team. This New York Met team is way too talented to be playing like this. So you have to ask yourself, well, if the performance isn't there and they can't seem to get out of their way, but meanwhile they won 101 games, what's the problem? Well, it's got to be a leadership problem. And what's leadership? At least in the sporting realm. Okay? Leadership is not just about holding yourself accountable after a game and having a press conference with the media after every game. Because as you know, talk is cheap. And it's all about the walk. It's not about the talking. We have plenty of Mets that are nice guys. They want to talk. They'll talk the talk after the game, no problem. Francisco Lindor will stand there in his locker, in front of his locker. Pete Alonso will stand there in front of his locker, no problem. Jeff McNeil will stand there in front of his locker, no problem. They'll take the questions. But where are they during the game? Where are they? How are they interacting with their teammates? Do you hear about any story about, this guy, I'm not going to say who it is, this guy helped me improve and that's why I'm a better player? Do you hear that? Do you hear anything like that from this ball club? No. So when you hear from guys like Ed Kranepool is not attached to the current ball club in any way. Like I said, he's Mets royalty. He's not attached to the team like, say, Keith Hernandez is in particular, or Ron Darling in particular. So, they have to sort of be a little more political, a little more sort of diplomatic, a better word to use. Be diplomatic on how they talk about the team. They can't ruffle feathers too much. Now, Ed Kranepool the fact that he's an elder statesman, he's 78 years old, he doesn't care what he says it like it is. This team has no leadership. And this is why they're in this situation now, to where they look like they're about to sell a few of these veteran players. Like David Robertson, Mark Hanna, obviously a few other guys. But again, and I've been talking about this for the last, well, really since May. This team has no leadership, and it's interesting. He kind of sort of didn't allude. He kind of alluded. This is Kranepool, that they're not getting anything out of the dugout. Last night, Jeff McNeil got thrown in the middle of his back. Okay, and he felt it was intentional. The pitcher said it wasn't. Since 2021, the Mets have led the league in hit by bats. They're constantly being hit all the time. And what have the Mets done in those 3 years to get that shit to stop? Nothing. Nothing. It happened again tonight. Now, I know Josiah Gray is all over the place. He's still finding his way in the majors. But this has happened too much over the last 3 seasons for this to keep continuing on. So you're seeing nothing out of the pitching staff. You're seeing nothing out of the position players saying, look, I keep getting hit that other guy on the other team. Nothing. When they asked Buck about it last night, he goes, to what end is it? What's the point of our guys hitting their guys? Well, Buck, it gets the shit to stop. That's what the end is get it to stop. We know that some of it's intentional. We know that and players get hurt. Pete Alonso missed time because the asshole down in Atlanta, those assholes in Atlanta hit Pete. And Pete missed the last game of that series. So that's why it's important to not start knocking guys down and just, getting them to move their feet. Too many hitters, specifically with the Braves in particular, way too comfortable when they go up against the Mets. They're way too comfortable. All right? And this nice guy image that the Mets have, that shit's got to be over with. I mean, enough. I've been saying this team is not a tough team. I mean, this is a weak team. This is a weak team. Okay, and we've seen this for 3 years now. I know they're going to be doing some stuff on the edges as we get to the trade deadline. Robertson will be gone, Canna will be gone, Tommy Pham will be gone. But they're going to have to decide what kind of team they're going to have moving forward. This team has got to find some toughness somewhere. Okay? They're certainly not really getting it out of the dugout. He kind of puts stuff aside. There's like no sense of urgency with him. I'm very surprised that he's been like this, and that's the manager. There is no sense of urgency from that dugout. There's no sense of urgency from any player that's been on the field. Now, when we talk about leadership, it's not just about, as the Thunder rules, it's not just about guys that talk in front of in front of the press after games. It's also about guys wanting to be the man in a big spot. Okay, Keith Hernandez was the best player on the Mets. Okay, you always wanted Keith up in a big spot. He was the guy you want up. That's when I talk about leadership on this channel, that's what I talk about. Okay, and they don't have anybody that wants to be in that spot and comes through. Okay, that's the problem. There's a real lack of that leadership. And I can go down the line with other players from the past that have been Mets players. Gary Carter was another one. Wanted to be the man in a big spot. He thrived in it. He loved it. There was nobody happier in that moment in those big spots than Gary Carter, with the smiles and the fist pumps and the waving of the cap. I mean, that's Gary Carter, folks. He wanted to be the man. Mike Piazza wanted to be the man. Now, he's a little bit quieter than Keith and Gary, but he wanted to be the man. Darryl Strawberry wanted to be the man. Who on this team wants to be in a big spot late in the game and comes through and delivers? Not one player on this team is capable, from what I have seen over the last 3 seasons, of being able to do that. We know Francisco Lindor can't do it. I've talked about it for the last 2 months. The guy will have a big game, and then, of course, what happens? He disappears for 10 games. But what has he done since the Mets played in Arizona? Absolutely, positively nothing. Okay, that's what I'm talking about in terms of leadership. And a lot of times you get the best leadership from your everyday players. You don't really get it from your pitchers. The Mets don't have that on the field every day. And they are desperate for it. I'll give you an example of another guy that was on the Mets that was probably the leader of the Mets in the early 2000s. That's Robin Ventura. That's a guy who wanted up in a big spot. That's a guy who wanted to be in the big spot. And he delivered more times than not. John Olerud was one of those guys, a very quiet version of a leader. Extremely quiet. You know. Edgardo Alfonso, another guy very quiet. So we've seen this with the Mets in the past. There's leadership that has expressed itself on the Mets. But this current team doesn't have it. Tommy Pham has it, but he is not an everyday. He's not really. He's a role player. I mean, we know he's playing every day, but he's a role player, and he was here to be a role player here. But there's no leadership. You know, and you'll get that leadership from your everyday players. I know this team hasn't performed well. They haven't pitched well. We know that. But where is the leadership? And you can't say, well, it's Alvarez. Alvarez is a kid. He's 21 years old. He's getting his feet wet in the majors. He doesn't count. He has no say in what goes on in that clubhouse. If he does, that's a scary thing. If he's the leader of the Mets at his age, we have a big problem here. Okay? And that is something that the Mets are going to have to address in the offseason. This is not a joke. You know, people saying I'm ranting and raving. I mean, I'm really fired up because I watched Ed tonight and Eddie Kranepool tonight. He was fired up, talking about the Mets and stuff. And this is a guy that played for guys that were big leaders. I mean, Gil Hodges is one of the legendary figures in the history of National League Baseball here, in terms of as a leader, with the Mets and with the Dodgers. The same thing with Tom Seaver. Tom Seaver did not accept losing. That's another issue here. Okay? When Keith came over, he didn't accept losing. All right? When guys play here, if they accept losing or not. I find that a lot of the guys that are on this team, they accept it. It's sort of like, it's the Mets, Well, this stuff has to come to an end. And Steve Cohen and Billy Epler have to figure out what the deal is with this group. And whoever's going to come in and run this ball and run this franchise. David Stearns is going to have to figure out what the hell to do with this group of people. Because this group has no leader. We thought we would have gotten that leader from the guy in the dugout. It doesn't seem like Buck is willing to sort of... I don't know what happened to him in terms of taking the bull by the horns when he was a younger guy. But right now, he's not capable of doing it. I mean, it's very frustrating. I mean, right now the Mets are losing 1-0, and they shouldn't be down against a bad team at this point. But I just wanted to get this out there because it really irritated me starting to think about it. And I'm getting more fired up too. Because we want to see the Mets play great. We want the Mets to be great. But you can't be great unless you have guys that are on your team that want greatness. I mean, we see guys that are able to do certain things, but they're not able... I mean, they need someone in that clubhouse that's an everyday player that'll push this group. Push this group for greatness. If certain guys can't be pushed, they can't perform, get them out of here. Well, you let me know what you think about this video on leadership. Okay, it's not just, it's not about how the guys take account of themselves after a game. Talk is cheap. Okay, it's about the walk. Do these guys come through in a big spot, and do they hold their teammates accountable if they fail or if they succeed, and what that entails? Okay. Let me know what you think about this video. Of course, please subscribe to the Baseball Hut. Thanks for watching as we get close to the trade deadline, and I'll see you later.